Dude, are you chicken? Atul smirked, nudging Rudra with his elbow. Me? Chicken? Rudra scoffed, trying to maintain his bravado. Please, I laugh in the face of danger. I use fear as a spice in my morning omelette. Yeah, big talk, Atul interrupted, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Then prove it. Ride the elevator at the old Blackwood Manor. Now, any sane person would question the logic of riding an elevator in a condemned building. But Rudra and Atul, they thrived on questionable decisions. Blackwood Manor was infamous in their town. The old mansion stood at the edge of the forest, its silhouette a dark, looming presence against the night sky. For years it had been the subject of countless ghost stories and urban legends, each more terrifying than the last. Locals whispered tales of a family cursed, a tragic fire and restless spirits. The manor had seen its fair share of tragedy, and the stories only grew more elaborate with each retelling. Some said they could still hear the cries of the lost souls on quiet nights. It was the perfect cocktail of spooky and stupid, a magnet for thrill-seekers and ghost hunters alike. The manor's decaying halls and shadowy corners promised an adrenaline rush like no other. And Rudra was already mentally drafting his acceptance speech for the Dumb Ways to Die awards. His friends often joked that he had a death wish, but Rudra saw it differently. To him, it was all about the thrill, the story, the experience. Okay, so here's the plan, Rudra said, adopting a business-like tone that clashed hilariously with the ridiculousness of the situation. His friends gathered around, a mix of excitement and apprehension on their faces. They'd done some crazy things before, but this was on another level. We hit the elevator at exactly 3 a.m., he continued, his voice steady despite the absurdity of the plan. The old elevator was notorious, a relic from a bygone era that had long since fallen into disrepair. Legend has it that's when it decides to take a little trip. The stories varied. Some said it transported you to another dimension, others claimed it showed you visions of the past. But one thing was certain, it was not for the faint of heart. And by trip, you mean plummet to our doom, Atul quipped, ever the voice of reason. His skepticism was well-founded. The elevator was ancient, and the idea of it still functioning was laughable. Details, Rudra waved a dismissive hand. He was always the optimist, the one who saw the glass half full, even if it was filled with something potentially lethal. Think of it as an adventure, he exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with excitement. To him, this was the ultimate test of courage, a story they would tell for years to come. A vertical roller coaster ride through the annals of history, he added, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The friends exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. This was it, their chance to make history, or at least a really good story. The witching hour arrived, cloaked in an eerie silence. Rudra and Atul stood before the rusted iron gates of Blackwood Manor, the building resembling a skeletal giant against the moonlit sky. You sure about this, man? Atul's voice was barely a whisper, his usual bravado replaced by a healthy dose of fear. Relax, Rudra patted Atul's shoulder, his voice unnaturally cheerful for someone about to tempt fate in a haunted elevator. Worst case scenario, we become permanent residents. Think of the property value. Ghosts are all the rage these days. With a deep breath and a shared look of apprehension, they pushed open the creaking gates and stepped into Blackwood Manor. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. Dust motes danced in the pale moonlight, filtering through the grimy windows. The elevator waited at the end of the hallway, a metal sarcophagus promising a one-way ticket to, well, somewhere. The doors groaned open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Rudra stepped inside, his grin a tad strained now. Atul followed, his eyes darting around nervously. Well, here goes nothing, Rudra muttered, pressing the button for the top floor. Silence. The elevator didn't budge. See, I told you, Atul began, but his words were cut short as the elevator lurched violently, throwing them against the wall. Section 5. A ghastly presence. The ascent was agonizingly slow, punctuated by bone-jarring shudders and the screech of metal on metal. Each jolt felt like a warning, a reminder of the age and instability of the ancient elevator. The walls, once painted a cheerful yellow, were now faded and peeling, adding to the sense of decay and abandonment. The air was thick with the scent of rust and mildew, making every breath feel heavy and labored. The lone light bulb flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed around them. Each flicker seemed to bring the shadows to life, creating monstrous shapes that loomed and twisted in the confined space. The oppressive darkness seemed to press in from all sides, making the small elevator feel even more claustrophobic. You know, Atul's voice trembled slightly. If we die here, I'm going to haunt you for all eternity for dragging me into this. His attempt at humor was thinly veiled, the fear evident in his eyes. The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the very real danger they were in. "Deal," Rudra chuckled, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease in the pit of his stomach. He forced a smile, hoping to lighten the mood, but the tension was palpable. The creaking of the elevator and the flickering light only added to the eerie atmosphere. "We can be a haunting duo. People will pay good money for that kind of entertainment." Rudra's voice was light, but there was an edge to it, a hint of the fear he was trying so hard to suppress. The idea of becoming ghosts, while meant as a joke, felt uncomfortably close to reality in that moment. Just then, the elevator jolted to a halt. The sudden stop was jarring, throwing them off balance and sending a wave of panic through their bodies. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing. The lights died completely, plunging them into absolute darkness. The blackness was so complete it felt almost tangible, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Every sound seemed amplified, every creak and groan of the elevator echoing in the pitch-black void. A cold, damp breeze swept through the elevator, and Rudra felt a shiver crawl down his spine. The air was suddenly frigid, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees in an instant. The cold seemed to seep into their very bones, adding to the growing sense of dread. It was then they both heard it, a soft, ethereal sigh seemingly emanating from the very air around them. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill through their hearts. It was as if the elevator itself was breathing, a ghostly presence making itself known in the oppressive darkness. The sigh was followed by a whisper, a barely audible murmur that seemed to come from all directions at once. They strained to hear, their hearts pounding in their chests, but the words were just out of reach, lost in the eerie silence. "Okay, that's just creepy," Rudra whispered, his voice betraying a hint of genuine fear for the first time. "You think?" Atul hissed back, his grip on Rudra's arm tightening. Suddenly the lights flickered back on. Standing in the corner, barely visible at first, was a figure shrouded in shadow. It was tall and skeletal, its form shifting and wavering like a heat haze. Rudra and Atul stared, their mouths agape, as the figure turned towards them. Two pinpoints of light glowed in the darkness where its eyes should be. "Oh, hey there," Rudra squeaked, his voice an octave higher than usual. "Fancy meeting you here. Just, admiring the, ambience?" The figure remained silent, its glowing eyes burning into them. The air around them grew colder, and a shiver ran down Rudra's spine. He could feel the weight of the figure's gaze as if it was peering into his very soul. The silence was deafening, and the tension in the air was palpable. Then it slowly extended a bony finger towards the elevator buttons. The movement was deliberate, almost as if it was savoring the moment. Rudra's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the finger hover over the buttons, unsure of what would happen next. "You, need a lift?" Rudra stammered, his bravado evaporating faster than water on a hot summer day. He tried to muster a smile, but it came out as a grimace. The figure's presence was overwhelming, and Rudra felt a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead. The figure nodded slowly, its skeletal head tilting to one side as if in curiosity. It was as if it was studying him, trying to understand his intentions. The nod was almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill down Rudra's spine. It pointed again at the button for the basement. The finger seemed to linger for a moment, as if emphasizing the choice. Rudra's mind raced with questions. Why the basement? What was down there? But he knew he had no choice but to comply. "Basement it is," Rudra chirped, slamming his hand on the button. He hoped his enthusiasm would mask his fear, but his voice betrayed him. The button lit up, and the elevator began its descent. The elevator lurched back into motion, descending faster than it had ascended. The walls seemed to close in on them, and the hum of the machinery grew louder. Rudra's heart raced as he gripped the handrail, trying to steady himself. "I knew it," the figure rasped, its voice a dry, whispery rattle. The sound sent shivers down Rudra's spine. It was a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the earth, ancient and full of secrets. "I knew someone would eventually press the basement button." The figure's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Rudra's mind raced with possibilities. What did it mean? What awaited them in the basement? "That vending machine down there owes me a bag of chips." The unexpected statement broke the tension, and Rudra couldn't help but let out a nervous laugh. The absurdity of the situation was almost too much to bear. As the elevator doors opened, he braced himself for whatever lay ahead. The elevator shuddered to a halt, the basement level. The doors clanged open, revealing a dusty and cobweb-filled space. The figure glided out, its bony hand reaching into its ethereal cloak. "Here," it said, turning back to them and offering a crumpled dollar bill. Get me a bag of those spicy jalapeno chips, will you? And for the love of all that is holy, don't press the up button again. This thing takes forever to go back up. And with that, the ghostly figure vanished into the shadows, leaving Rudra and Atul standing there speechless, holding a single ghostly dollar. So, Atul finally broke the silence. Jalapeno chips, huh? Rudra let out a shaky laugh, wiping the sweat from his brow. Yep, ghosts gotta eat, right? And that, my friends, is the story of how Rudra and Atul almost became permanent residents of Blackwood Manor. Turns out the only thing scarier than a haunted elevator is a ghost with a craving for spicy snacks. Stay tuned for more adventures, and if we survive to tell them, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let us know what you'd do if you were stuck in an elevator with a snack-loving ghost.